AJ Storr is officially in the transfer portal. Is the musical chairs of EXITS officially done for KU? Plus a deep dive into a player that appeared on a top 6 list, who averaged almost 20 points per game, almost 10 rebounds per game at a smaller school. Let's discuss all that on today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. You can find it anywhere you get your podcast, including on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the show. Thank you for making it your first listen every day. And thank you to the everydayers catching all of our episodes here with Locked On Jayhawks. The transfer portal continues on for KU basketball. AJ Storr officially enters into the transfer portal. We're also going to do a target deep dive on Kansas making the final 6 for Amarri Monroe, a transfer from Quinnipiac. And we'll get into all that, how he fits in, scouting report and stuff. Let's start with the AJ Storr news. First, this episode of the show, though, is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from. Need one right now? Grab a 5-Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. Stock up today and stay energized. So we just had an episode yesterday or whatever, if you're an everyday, you caught it. And we kind of talked about okay, why is Storr not entered yet? And is there some smoke? Is there some noise that maybe he could end up sticking around and then he ends up transferring away? I don't know. Maybe we have superpowers because we just did a Keyshawn Hall deep dive. And then the very next day he commits, not to Kansas, but to Auburn in the end. So I guess whoever we talk about today, I'm doing this, we're going to talk about Amarri Monroe later. He's probably just going to commit tomorrow. That's just how this has been working. But with Storr entering the portal, it kind of wraps up what you figure to be portal season at this point for Kansas. It doesn't officially wrap everything up, and we are at a point in time now where you almost need more players to do what Bryson Tiller did and make some sort of a post on social media to confirm you're going to be here next season, right? But it does seem like Elmarko Jackson, does seem like Jamari McDowell will be here, does seem like, obviously after that from Bryson Tiller, does seem like Darryn Peterson, does seem like at this point Samis Calderon. Now we have seen the past couple of years where there has been a freshman, like obviously last year it was LeBaron Philon. We saw Marcus Adams the year before that, as well as, was it Chris Johnson? We've seen freshmen or multiple, really the last couple years, who were planning on coming to KU, and then it just didn't happen at the end. So we'll see if that ends up happening with maybe a guy like Samis Calderon or not, but I'm going to assume he's here for now. And then I guess the last big one is what happens with Noah Shelby, who came in as a walk-on but was going to earn his way to the scholarships, and he's a former scholarship player at lower levels and at Vanderbilt and Rice and stuff. And now the roster expands, that walk-ons, you're looking for somebody to be, content kind of in that role, and Shelby, a good shooter, can kind of be at the back end of the roster. So Storr kind of clears away that by not having him anymore. Obviously, things did not go according to plan for AJ Storr this season, or for Kansas with AJ Storr this season. Think about this. He averaged almost 17 points per game this season before at Wisconsin. He only surpassed his average at Wisconsin in one single game at Kansas. And it was that one toward the end of the season in the Big 12 tournament against UCF. Now, obviously, it came toward the end of the year, and he had 2 good outings in his last 3 performances. And, there was some maybe a little bit more, encouragement from fans after that to be like, okay, well, he started to show something. Well, maybe you get him back another year, right? But I don't know. I guess it wouldn't shock me to see AJ Storr at his next school that he goes to put up good points. If he goes somewhere that he can be the primary perimeter option, I think that would be best for him in that school. I just, looking back, the fit was never there. And it's one of those that, it is a little hindsight 2020. I do remember last year being a little lower on it. And then when it happened, I talked myself into it, and that, okay, well, they'll make it work. It's just a very talented player. You give Bill Self talent, he'll make it work. I think we found out that no, the fit is very important. And so for Bill Self, I've been talking about this a lot. If you're not a good defender, you have to kind of be a good rebounder. You have to do something else, for instance. Or if you're not a good rebounder, you have to be a good defender, right? And AJ Storr was neither of those. And so from that standpoint, it just wasn't there. And again, I don't think AJ Storr is a bad kid or anything, but also he's just not one of those players whose motor runs at a 100% level like all the time. And I think that can wear on you if you're Bill Self and how he coaches and what he demands of players, not just on the floor, but in practice. And then you go back and you think, I know it's easy to think about some of the block he had, the chase down against Arkansas, and the last couple games, 2 of the last 3, doing what he did from scoring output. But like, there were a lot of plays last season where he just threw the ball away to no one, or it was a very lazy pass that went away, or just made kind of head scratching decisions that you can understand why it's best for both parties to move on. Like I said, I could see AJ Storr having a big season next year wherever he winds up, which will be his 8th school in 8 years when you go back to his high school days. And maybe that's the lesson here as you're looking at this. It's not just a lesson of, okay, Bill Self needs players that, you have to do one of the two, rebounding or defend, right? And I guess if you want to say like, oh, well, the point guard, that's a different position, sure, whatever. If you're a wing or you're a center, you have to do one of the two. And preferably, yeah, Bill Self wants you to do both. But in the case of AJ Storr, it was like, okay, you're not really a great three-point shooter. You were a fine three-point shooter. You're not rebounding. You're not defending. Yes, you can score. And also it was a bad fit in terms of he's best scoring when he's able to find creases to get to the rim. Well, you're not having as many of those with 2 bigs. So that was unfortunate for him too. Although at Wisconsin, he played next to 2 bigs and that worked okay. Neither here nor there. When you look at it, that's one takeaway, right? Like, you're better off getting dogs, so to speak, like guys who are going to do those little things, who maybe don't have as much potential or ceiling or scoring punch that AJ Storr does on paper or did on paper. Because if they don't click with Bill Self, you're not going to get the playing time. You're not going to get the opportunity to utilize that scoring punch anyway. So it just becomes wasted, And so to that standpoint, I think you have to adjust that way in how you approach the portal this go around, right? Obviously, without Storr, that means no real wings on the KU roster. I mean, if you want to count Calderon as a wing, I almost differentiate. Like, you can have wings who are 2-3 wings, more of like your Ryland Griffin, I guess Josh Dix type wings. And then you have your wings that are more your like 3-4 wings, kind of your Jalen Wilson types, right? Amarri Monroe, who we're going to talk about. Storr kind of interesting because not a good enough rebounder to be in the 4 classification. He's just like a 3. He's just a pure 3. I mean, that's part of it too. You want guys that are versatile, right? You can play multiple positions. With Storr, he just was a 3. You might have tried to get away with playing him some at the 4, but because of the rebounding stuff, like, you just didn't have that there. But no real wings on the roster, because I almost count Calderon as just like 4 specifically. Like, I don't know that you'd want to play him at the 3. So that means no real wings on the roster, which you're going to have to recruit a bunch of now at this point. But as much as I say that, where it's like, yeah, they got to go get wings now. They lost all their wings. They don't have any wings. And last time they won a national championship, they had all these great wings. At the same point in time, they don't have a lot of anything on the roster. I mean, they've 6 scholarship players, assuming Noah Shelby counts into that, for 14 scholarships available this year, because the one they have to give away for the final one. So 8 scholarships are available for Kansas at this point in time. So it's not just the wings. It's just they need like everything in general. So like, if we're looking at the shopping list here for Bill Self, you're looking for a guard to start next to Darryn Peterson. And honestly, based on the way that Kansas has approached the portal so far, maybe not going all in on Donovan Dent, right? It doesn't seem like they've been linked super highly to some of like the point guards. Seems like they've been linked a little bit more to the shooting guard types. So what is that? I mean, we heard all about that Darryn Peterson would be kind of the point guard for them, but you still wondered if they would bring in a combo guard that basically would be 2 point guards out there. It feels like the way to me that they're entering the portal, Peterson is like the point guard, and they're looking for more of a complementary guard, a shooting guard to play next to him. So it looks like that would be the option that they're going to, at least just based on, what it feels like at this point in time. Who knows? They need a starting 5-man. You lose Floyd Badunga. Now, hypothetically, Bryson Tiller could be that, but coming off the injury, he's going to be a freshman. Like, I don't think you should count on that. They need a starting 4-man. Now, it is up to Bill Self whether that's more of a power forward or whether that's a wing necessarily. I think my preference would be a wing, but if you do get more of an undersized center, maybe it does make sense to get a power forward versus if you get like a really big center, probably makes more sense to get a wing who can shoot it a little bit more. So that'll kind of depend what you do there. You might need another starter in addition to that to play the 3, right? If you have Peterson at the 1, if you have whatever 2 guard you bring in at the 2, and then your 4 and 5, you still need a 3. Now, that one depends on Elmarko Jackson. What if Elmarko does come back from the injury and looks like the guy he was maybe trending to be last offseason? And then you start Peterson, Jackson, and the 2-3 guard that you got in addition to the other players. That is entirely possible, but also, again, as bad of an injury as Elmarko had, I think it would be fair to assume he would take a jump in his level of competition. But once you account for the injury, he has to now overcome the injury jump. That it's like, what are you going to get there? You don't know. But they need bench pieces too. You probably need a 3-point shooter there. You need somebody in the Jalen Coleman-Lands role. You need backup bigs. You need bench bigs. You need bench wings. It's really just everything. So maybe there's someone in the portal who can help. What about how about Amarri Monroe, who we're going to talk about here on a deep dive? This is Locked On Jayhawks. This episode of the show is brought to you by Fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing the future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online, right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. It's beyond life insurance too. Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help you plan for your children's future. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's fabric.com/lockedoncollege. Meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Price is subject to underwriting and health questions. Today's episode of the show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Baseball season's in full swing, pun intended, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, first inning runs. Prize Picks keeps every game exciting. It's fast and simple. Setting a lineup can take less than 60 seconds, and when you win, your payout is also quick. It's safe and it's secure. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Continue on. Don't forget to check out Locked On College Basketball for your second listen every day. Thanks for joining us here on Locked On Jayhawks. We're going to have plenty more player deep dives and transfer portal talk for KU. And, at some point, I know it feels like it's never going to happen, but they will start getting commits. I can promise you that. Now, will it be up to the caliber of the high expectations you have? That I cannot promise, but they will start getting some players at some point in time to commit to them. We'll break those down when they happen here on the Locked On Jayhawks, so make sure you're subscribed to the show. Okay, we're going to get into one of those deep dives right now, and that would be one Amarri Monroe, because he announced earlier today he is down to 6 schools: Rutgers, Connecticut, I guess UConn, Miami, Ole Miss, Pitt, and then obviously Kansas. And I should say this, if you've been watching, if you're an everydayer and been catching past shows, at certain points, I bring up the handy dandy Google sheet with all the transfer targets that I either see, that there's reports online about Kansas having, contact with, or just players that I see enter the portal. I'm like, oh, I think that would be a good fit for Kansas, or maybe at least interesting in that specific role or something like that, right? And I did not have Amarri Monroe on there, even after looking into him a little bit, because I didn't think he was exactly a fit. You look at the raw numbers and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's averaging he's averaging 18.1 points per game, 9.1 rebounds per game last season for Quinnipiac. And then you start looking into the efficiency numbers. Then you start wondering about, okay, would he have to play a bench role at Kansas? And then you figure a guy who's been putting up those numbers is like, yeah, he's probably going to want to start somewhere, right? So I don't think that's a fit for Kansas. But then you see this list come out and, okay, well, I guess then it deserves me putting him back on the list. So I've put him on the list. I've done the deep dive, and here we go. And I will say too, I mention this all the time. Sometimes some of the lists you see come out there from different kids that involve Kansas doesn't actually involve Kansas, or it is in some other cases it does, but it's not to the level that it makes it sound like. Like sometimes you'll see a list of schools where it's like a bunch of mid-majors and then it's Kansas, and it's like, wait, what is Kansas doing there? And in reality, either Kansas just didn't call and they're putting it up there because Bill Self's not going to come out and be like, no, that kid's a liar. That's just bad business, right? For Bill Self, that'd be bad business for working with that agent, right? So you're not going to deny it. The other part of it is sometimes it's true that, like, again, you get this list of schools and it's a bunch of mid-majors and then Kansas. And it's possible that Bill Self just called and was like, hey, we're looking for somebody to be our 9th man, our 10th man. Would you be interested in that? Or are you looking to go start somewhere? The kid's like, no, I kind of want to go start somewhere, right? Even if it's a smaller school, I want to go start somewhere. And at that point, you can say, oh, well, there was some interest in Kansas. Didn't say what type of interest it was or for me to be. So sometimes you do have to take those lists with a bit of skepticism, and it's impossible to know which or what, right? But I'll say this, the fact that it is, it's all power, Rutgers, Big Ten, Pitt, ACC, UConn, Big East, Miami, ACC, Ole Miss, SEC, Kansas, Big 12. The fact that that is the list tells me that, no, this is very real. Now, how much does the full court press on? I don't know. I do also find it interesting that Bill Self is very tight with Chris Beard, and they offered him from Ole Miss, right? So that probably tells you this is very real. At least it does to me. So let's dive into this. Let's start here, and this will be a good stat to throw out. CBB Analytics has this cool little tool that you can compare and contrast player profiles based on their statistical profile. Nothing about actually watching their game or whatever, but just based on the statistics, right? Comparing them to other players across the country. You can compare him to players from the Big 12. But here were his two top statistical comparisons across the country, because they're both interesting players here. So it's on a scale of 1 to 100. Some players you click like, oh, what's the closest comparison? And the closest is like an 80, which, means that there's not really somebody that close to him. There's an 88.8 and an 87.4. The first one is RJ Lewis of St. John's, who is one of the top players in the portal in general. So he compares similarly to him. The other one is former Jayhawk, and I don't know if he'll get a shot in the NBA. I think he will. Tyon Grant Foster, who's been really good these past couple seasons at Grand Canyon. That should be, encouraging that that's the case. Now, you do have to factor in that those statistic profiles are not graded on a curve for what conference you're in. So the fact that RJ Lewis did those statistics in the Big East versus Amarri Monroe doing it in the MAC, the AA MAC, is a little bit different, right? But you're talking about a 6'7" wing that can play the 3 or the 4. He is 220 pounds. He'll be a senior this next season. He started his career at Wofford for 1 year, then went to Quinnipiac for 2 years. 18.1 points, 9.1 rebounds, 1.6 assists, really good steal numbers, 2.3 steals per game, 0.8 blocks per game. The efficiency, though, not super great. Only 40.5% from the floor. Only 27.3% from three-point range, but took a lot of threes, 5.8 threes per game. Did shoot very well at the free throw line, 82.6% on 5 attempts per game. Overall, the effective field goal percentage, true shooting percentage are not great, but the on-off numbers are very good for him. He's a +8 net rating on offense. He's a -5.5 on the defensive side, so overall +13.5 on total net rating there. And Bart Torvik has a rating system where, like, the top guys are around like a +5. That's just generally where it's around. He's a +2.3, so kind of middle of the pack of the players there in the transfer portal. Now, you look at the strengths for Amarri Monroe. He's a very good athlete. Big, powerful player, 6'7", 220. He's a solid athlete, throws down powerful dunks. He had 29 dunks this past season, and that helped him get to 3.6 fast break points per 40 minutes, which ranked in the 98th percentile nationally. So good transition player here. And the athleticism also led to him being good at getting putbacks on the offensive end of the floor. I always say defensive rebounding is about strength, positioning, boxing guys out. Offensive rebounding is more about its quickness, its leaping ability, its craftiness of working around the guy trying to box you out, right? So he had a below average offensive rebound rate, right around average, but below average. But he still averaged 4.5 second chance points per game. That tells you that he has a good second jump too, because when he's getting the offensive rebound, he's putting them back at a high rate. And that ranked in the 92nd percentile for second chance points per game. He also was in the 84th percentile in points per possessions off putback. So he did it efficiently. And he, for whatever I mentioned that his on-off or his offensive rebound rate wasn't anything that jumped off page too much. But when he was on the floor, the difference of him being on the floor versus off the floor for the team's offensive rebound rate ranked in the 98th percentile. So something he was doing when he was on the floor was able to help the whole team be a much better offensive rebounding team. I think the athleticism that I mentioned also led to him being a good defensive player. Hard to say without watching a bunch of games how good overall he is on defense. Sometimes guys are just good at getting steals and blocks. They take risks, but they're not fundamentally sound defenders. I don't have the answer there, but 75th percentile Hakeem rate, 99th percentile steal rate, and he did it all without fouling a ton defensively. And how do you complete the defensive possession? You grab the defensive rebound, or I guess you get a steal, but we mentioned the steal rate good. 95th percentile in defensive rebound rate. So with his athleticism and power, it allows him to be a good defender. Also, like I said, very strong free throw shooter, 93rd percentile there. And he was on a team that won. I mean, not in the top 200 on KenPom, but that's just because the conference they play in. He did what he did in the conference that you would want him to. They won the MAC regular season. So he contributed to winning in a real way. And overall, the team, like I said, was about 13.5 points better per 100 possessions when he was on the floor, which gave him an 89th percentile on-off rating. Now, as far as the questions, how much were the stats inflated by playing in a lower conference like the MAC? How much were the stats inflated by the fact that Quinnipiac played a top 15 tempo nationally? So you're playing really fast, you're getting extra possessions, you're doing it in a lower level conference, easier to put up the counting sets, especially when you look at some of the efficiency numbers that they're not great. The other question is shooting. Only 13th percentile in off the dribble shooting, so really struggled shooting off the dribble. He was a little better on spot ups at 42nd percentile, but that's still slightly below average. And again, important to keep in mind that spot up shooting isn't necessarily catch and shoot. Catch and shoot counts the spot up shooting, but you can also attack a closeout, finish a layup, something like that. And then you look at the zones that he shot in. He was just 18th percentile at the rim. He was 18th percentile in the paint, was good in mid-range, 71st percentile in mid-range, and then 41st percentile above the break threes at 27% and 46th percentile on corner threes at almost 30%. So not great shooting numbers there, and that led to efficiency as a whole being kind of a big question here. 15th percentile in effective field goal percentage, 37th percentile in free throw attempt rate. So he made free throws, didn't get there a ton necessarily. 23rd percentile in two-point percentage, 40th percentile in three-point percentage, despite the fact that he took a 91st percentile for three-point attempts per 40. So he was taking a lot of threes, wasn't always making them, and then 31st percentile in assist to turnover rate. And even in transition, where he's good as being an athlete and threw down some cool dunks, still just 38th percentile in points per possession in transition. So the ball was in his hands a lot. He had a 98th percentage usage rate. Does that mean he needs the ball in his hands to be comfortable? Or is he comfortable giving it up to where, you know, maybe he had to be fit into this role for Quinnipiac, and playing more of an off-ball role will help him with a lot of the efficiency, and playing a smaller role will help him with the efficiency, and then he can just, you know, thrive on the things he does well? I don't know. That's the big question here. So how would he fit specifically with Kansas? Let's discuss that next. This episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings snuck up on us again, and if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it, or wherever you need it too. I have on-the-go convenience, whether you're at a game, whether you're traveling somewhere, whether you're getting up early, whether you got woken up early by a thunderstorm or a baby. 5 Hour Energy is easy to grab, keeps you feeling refreshed. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. Need one now? Grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They're everywhere. Stock up today and stay energized with 5 Hour Energy.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
So again, check out Locked On College Basketball. Get you ready for the semifinals. Should be some awesome games. Well, hopefully. Felt like every round it's like all these really good seeds should be good games. And nope, not good games. Anyway, for Kansas, Amarri Monroe, how would he fit in with KU? We just went over the strengths and questions here. Let's start here. What would he add to the team? Well, Kansas is losing Floyd Badunga. They were not a particularly great, they were about middle of the pack nationally, offensive rebound team. And can they make that even better this upcoming season? Well, Floyd Badunga was your best offensive rebounder from a season ago. He's gone now. So he would help with the offensive rebounding. I think just in general, if you're looking for KU to be more athletic, which I think we all are, and you have a really good athlete here, you put him with Bill Self. Can he hone in on the other parts of his game to build with that athleticism? And then the other part of this is I think the potential to be a really good defender, right? Like I said, I have not watched all the games for Amarri Monroe, and it's hard because when you're watching a highlight package, which I have watched highlight packages of him, you're not getting to watch 30-second shot clock defensive possessions. How's he doing off-ball defense? How's he doing on the ball on every play? The only plays you're seeing is when he gets the steal or the block. So it's like hard to know exactly how good he is defensively. The on-off numbers like him on the defensive end of the court, I'll tell you that. The Hakeem rate, the steal rate, like him on that end. His athleticism, his size makes him so that he should be a good defender. So like I'm leaning to the idea that he probably is a good defender. And so in theory, I think if you bring him on and he's playing a smaller role than the 98th usage percentage at Quinnipiac and, whatever that role ends up being at Kansas, and if he ends up being like a 15 to 20 minute wing off the bench that can be this defensive stopper and provide athleticism and energy off the bench, I actually am kind of in on that because I could see him being that defensive stopper wing that provides the rebounding and the energy. But if the idea here is for him to be a starter or for him to play this big role, I don't like that because I don't think the shooting is quite there. I have questions about, how does that work with Darryn Peterson, with having someone, right? Because I've talked about this before. You can have multiple guys who need the ball in their hands or can make plays with the ball in their hands, but you can't have like all five guys. You can't have four guys on the court necessarily who need that to be the case. And I don't know that this would be a spot that I would want to use up one of those spots, I guess. So again, this depends on the role, like a lot of other fits. If the role is bench wing, that gives you athleticism and defense, and hey, who knows? Maybe the shooting does become more efficient with another year, and then all of a sudden you really got something that can turn it into even more. Great. But if the idea here is, no, this is starter level role or going to get up a ton of shots or something like that, I'm a little less keen on it at that point in time because the efficiency just hasn't been there. And that was at a lower level, right? Shooting 40% from the floor. The one game, I think I looked back at his schedule, the one game he played against a power, I don't even know what it's called. Obviously, football, it's Power 4, but basketball, you have the Big East too, so whatever. Power 5, the one Power 5 school he played in this season, I believe, was St. John's, and he went 0 for 9 from the floor. Now, St. John's had the literal #1 defense in the country, so that is a tough, especially early in the season, like that is a very tough, like, oh, that's the one Power 4 school we played. It's literally the best defense in the country, right? I don't know now if Houston surpassed them, but whatever, like, that is tough, but it is a little bit wary. So again, depends on the role here. All right, we'll have more deep dives coming at you, more content coming at you too. This has been Locked on Jayhawks. See you next time.